Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Chala, Pedig Beis, still Halacha Aleph. We're learning today Daf Chaf, and we left off on Daf Yud Tes Amid Beis by the brackets, by the two dots, 6 lines from the bottom. We're dedicating today's class L'Refuah Shlema Mechol Ben Nechamadina. So we learned in our Mishnah that if you have a Isa, a dough, that was kneaded, Shenilsha, with Mei Petis, and just to repeat it once, and we'll leave it at that. You have 7 halachic liquids. Yad, shachat, dam. All other liquids, that's the mnemonic for them. All the other liquids are called mei peres, and no debate, mei peres are not considered a liquid regarding the law of hechsher. They won't be machshir oichlin, making them susceptible to becoming tamei. However, the Mishnah says, without a machloikas, that if you have a dough that was kneaded together with mei peres, the din will be as chayeves bechalim. What's the chiddush? The chiddush is that one might argue that since mei peres in the area of hechsher is not considered a liquid, maybe the dough is not to be viewed as one unit. Why? It's a dough, but it was kneaded with mei peres. If we would not view it as one unit, how would it be chayiv chala when the chiyuv of chala is contingent on there being a minimum amount of flour that has to be now kneaded together? If there's no togetherness, it's like flour. Yet the Mishnah says that's the chiddush that isa shenilsha b'mei peres is chayeves b'chala. Now we're going to begin today's daf by quoting a Mishnah in Tful Yom with a machloikes tanoim, as we will speak out when we learn the sugya inside, and we will see that the machlekes in Tful Yom is regarding whether mei peres will make the dough into one unit or not. And there's going to be 3 different approaches in the Gemara, whether our Mishnah only follows one opinion of the Mishnah in Tful Yom, whether our Mishnah follows none of the opinions in Tful Yom, or Adarabba, our Mishnah can go l'kula alma, as we will see when we develop the sugya.
Sorry, Rabbi, my
Sure.
apologies. Why is May Parrot not considered to make it one unit? I missed that.
Well, listen, physically it might look the same to us, but by the fact that the Torah does not consider mei peres liquid, concerning the din of hechsher, for foods to become tamei after they are cut off the ground, I'm talking about the raw materials, the grain, they have to first become wetted with more details, b'ritzoin haba'alim, right? Point is that since mei peres in other areas of Jewish law is not considered a liquid, maybe it's not considered a liquid regarding making a dough.
Got it, thanks.
What we will have at the end of the sugya, which is amazing, even though our Mishnah quotes no machlokes, that we will have an opinion from Amoraim. Later we'll find a Tana that will hold opposite of our Mishnah, that a dough that was kneaded b'mei peres is taka exempt from challah. That will be the end of after we're trying to make the Mishnah work with Tful Yom, we'll see that our Mishnah is taka not l'kula alma. That will be the first part of today's daf. Then we're going to move on to the final law in the Mishnah that says that a woman, even unclothed, can separate challah. The chiddush of that is not concerning the act of separation, but it's concerning the rabbinic obligation. Let's go with the rabbinic obligation that prior to doing a mitzvah, as a rule, with exceptions, you got to make a bracha, birchas ha-mitzvahs. A bracha consists of taking Hashem's name. Hashem's name may not be said when one's private parts are exposed. So really, it's a din that contrasts a man and a woman when they're sitting, that a man, when sitting, is still someone whose erva is halachically deemed as exposed, may not make a bracha, may not cover his private parts with his own hand. That doesn't work halachically, versus a woman. That will be the opening of our Gemara. Now, because of that, we're going to learn a lot of Masechtas Brachas today. And for many people that learned the Bavli, it's going to be a Geshmaka review. Some of what we're learning now, we also had in the Yerushalmi. First of all, just to quickly go over, there are 2 main reasons why we wash our hands prior to eating bread. The first is the most commonly known, and that is that kohanim have to always wash their hands prior to eating any truma, because the chachamim, one of the Shmoina Asar Davar is that stam yodayim shniyos. Truma can become susceptible even on a level on a shlishi. That means yodayim are poislin truma. I'm using the word poisel because by tuma, for those of us who are learning Rambam now, we just began Sefer Tara. By whenever something is tame, but it's no longer able to further the tuma, we use the word poisel, psul. Like if kachim becomes a shlishi, since kachim can become a revi, we would say metames hakachim, upoisel es hatruma. Just to remember that as a side. So number one is kohanim have to wash their hands. The Chachamim wanting us to help the Kohanim remember that when they will be eating Truma, now they don't eat Truma because they are Tameh and the Truma is Tameh. So we all wash our hands, but not for everything before a Seudah, before eating bread. So there's another reason for Natilas Yadayim, and that is Pashit, that there is eating is somewhat similar to the act of Avodah. Our Shulchan is somehow connected to the Mizbeach, and we want to elevate our eating that it should be an act done b'tara or b'kedusha, and for that we wash our hands. Connected even also to the physical cleanliness, just to make that clear. These are two reasons. Bottom line is that we have to wash our hands, and the question that we will be discussing, both Linatilos Yadayim and Lachala, fascinating. A person is traveling, and they don't have water right here. How far must they travel to get water? Same thing with Chala. Even though there is nothing wrong making flour or dough tameh, well, there is. Why? Because since you're going to separate challah is like truma. We want for the kohen to be allowed to eat the challah. We much prefer for the challah to be pure versus it being tameh. If I am tameh, I have to be metaher myself, which would be even if my yodayim, because when I separate the challah, my yodayim are shniyos, they'll be metame the challah. Or if a person has kalim that are tummy, the same concept, you want to be metayr the kalim, so when you make the dough doesn't become tummy, the challah doesn't become tummy. How far do you have to travel? So there's a difference between whether the water is in front of you, whether the water is behind you. And that will be something that we're going to review, and we're going to contrast that to mayim achreinim. Mayim achreinim is needed for danger reasons, and sometimes we say chamira sakanta mi yisura, to take away the melach sedoimis. And then the Gemara is going to share with us the stories in a very brief way. I'm just quoting the words that al horishonim nechol psar chazir story that will have just merumas in the Gemara. I'll repeat it when we learn the Gemara. And val mayim achreinim yotzos isha mi beisa, or one person was murdered, 3 people got killed because of the lack of washing mayim achreinim. That's a musar dika, elul dika for the ones next door way of telling people you better do it. If you're not going to do it, oy vay voy. And if we'll have enough time, we'll open up the topic of koil be'isha erva, all connected to the erva, to the woman unclothed. That's today's daf. Let's go on daf Yutes Amid Beis, 6 lines from the bottom. So the first part is very lumdish. So the Mishnah says, Kevan isha sheni loisha. That's the right pronunciation. B'mei peiros. The Mishnah writes, one opinion, chayeves bechalo. What's the chiddush? Again, the chiddush is that we view the binding of the flour with apple juice as a bona fide dough, meaning dough 1 unit. Why am I looking for the one shtick, the 1 unit? Because you need to have the minimum amount of 43.2 eggs of flour turned into a unit of dough for us to trigger the chiyuv of challah. So it binds it. Says the Gemara, Zoy, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina Amar, if that's the case, which is the case, our Mishnah, according to him, can only follow Rabbi Eliezer ben Yehuda ish bir toisa, or other people have it without the yud bar toisa. Where do we have his opinion? The Tanina Taman, we're going to a Mishnah in Tful Yoim, right, in Tara, Taharois, the Rambam calls it Tara, right? Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Kachim and Tarois. Now over there, Chevra, it's not the same. There we're speaking about grain. The grain was already mukhshar l'kabel tuma. Why is that? Because after it was cut off the ground, it became wet, b'ritzoin haba'olim, with any one of the 7 liquids, okay? Which means that it won't help you, listen, my friends, if the dough, which is the case in Tful Yoim, was kneaded b'mei peiros. That won't help. Meaning, if you have grain, like the ones that we make from matzah shmura, doesn't mean it was shmura. Means is that from some point, ideally the most chamur is mishas ktsira, it was guarded for it never to become wet. Now for making matzah, it's for another reason, because if a kernel has the slightest crack and it becomes wet, the water goes in it and it will be machmitz the kernel. The kernel will become chametz gamur. Even though be'emes pre-Pesach there'll be bittul, but we don't want to rely on that. Here it's within a tumentara. If the grain becomes wet, even though now it's dry, even if you make the dough b'mei peiros are not machshir. It's too late. The flour comes from a grain that's already muchshir l'kabel tuma, which was the case. Another detail: when a person is
I'm sorry again. That way, we don't say hamotzi on.
I don't want to go there. I have to help up here. Hold your question. I don't mean to do that because we have to follow the whole thing. Now, a tful yoim means someone who was tamei that already went to the mikvah, but it's not yet head of shemesh. I know that head of shemesh sounds like sunset. Head of shemesh means the end of sunset. The end of sunset means tzeisak rechavim. Just get used to that. Now, the din is that if a tful yoim touches chulin, he won't be metama the chulin. If a tful yoim even touches meiser sheni, he will not be metama the meiser sheni. What I'm saying now is midrabanan, okay. But a tful yoim is metama truma. A tful yoim has to wait until head of shemesh prior to touching truma. Or a tful yoim cannot eat truma, which is the first mishnah in brachas, until head of shemesh, which means until tzeisak rechavim. Case in this mishnah is you have a dough. The dough was needed b'mei peiros. The mei peiros is not machshir, but the dough needed flour that came from grain that were already muchshired. We're talking about grain of truma. The whole, the grain, all of the grain was muchshired. Muchshired doesn't mean tummy. Now that it was needed, the mei peiros at tful yoim touched one piece of the dough with the finger. What he touched, vada is tummy. Midrabanan, because he went to the mikvah. Okay, but it's tummy. If we are to view the dough as one unit, one mass, then all of it is tummy. If we are going to say, which is connected to our Mishnah, that since mei peiros v'negei dinim tumatara, it's not a liquid, so maybe it's not a liquid concerning it's not a liquid vis-a-vis making a dough, which means that we make believe as if it's still flour. What's the din of flour? If a tful yoim touches flour, the areas that were adjacent to his finger become a shlishi. Don't forget, a tful yoim is on the level of a sheni. It becomes a shlishi. A shlishi by truma cannot make it a V, which means only that which touched the finger became tamei. So there's a machlokes tanoim. Does the whole dough become tamei, or only the area that touched the finger of the tful yoim?
Versus the water can make it a V?
Versus, forget about it, a V. Versus making a dough with water, or with oil, or with any other of the 7 liquids. Vadai, the dough is one unit, so a tful yoim that touched any part of it will be matama all of it. It's like when I touch an apple. We don't say only that part of the apple is tummy. The whole apple, it's one mitzias. It's one gush. It's one mess. So let's on. Rabbi Lazar ben Yehuda Ishbar Toisa Omer. Interestingly, both opinions is b'shem Rabbi Yeshua, mishum Rabbi Yeshua, that it's one mass or one unit. What made it one unit? Mei peiros. Therefore, he was pasal. The word pasal again is used bedavka, even though psul, the word psul in the area of tumentara means it's on a level like by truma. A truma is called psul when it's a shlishi. Kachim is called pasul when it's a revi, because it doesn't go further. Pasal eskula, even though by mechatas it goes until a chamishi, but let's not go there. Now, Rabbi Akiva says in the name of the same Rabbi Yeshua, no, loy pasal elamokim magoi. So what the Gemara begins, the first approach, which is from the Amoira Rabbi Yossi but Rabbi Chanina, that our Mishnah can only follow the sheet of Rabbi Lazar ben Yehuda Ish Bar Toisa. Saying Bar Toisa, it's connected in my head because in the way we have it, I think in the Pirkei Avos is with that vowels. But anyways, of course, because according to Rabbi Akiva, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, only Tamei, Makei, Magoi, the Gemara is taking it as a given, The same rules for Tumah and Tara is the same rules for Chala. If we don't view it as one unit, then we should not view it as one unit or one mass, B'negea the dinim of Chala, and therefore you don't have the minimum shear. Beautiful. Daf Chav, today's daf. And now again, like I said, there are really three approaches. The first one is the easiest to chap. Rab Shimon ben Lakish is going to learn in the opposite direction, difficult direction, that our Mishnah can follow no one. It's a new sheet to our Mishnah. That ma peligin, hold on. Where do they argue in the Mishnah Tful Yoim? Shlomi, you were going there. The case there was before you kneaded the dough. Forget about did you use meiperes, did you use from the Shiva Samashkin? Before that, it became mukhshar already as flour. Was bishuhuchsharu, and then niloisha. And there we have a machloikas tanoim whether meiperes are able to create a unit or not. Shemeiperes mechavrin lahachshir. In other words, mechavrin normally means the right opinion. Chivur means white. But in our context means that at least you have one Tana, right, that will hold that it makes it into a mess. It unites it. Mechaber means it makes it good in order for us to say that since it was already mukhshir, now all of it will become tummy. One Tana, at least, not Rabbi Akiva. But Aval imni loishav achakach uchshuru. But Reish Lakish is arguing what were to happen in the case of Tful Yaim that you had flour that was never mukhshar, and you made it into a dough. Okay, and now the dough is made out of apple juice. What happens right now if a little bit of water touches one part of the dough, not the tumah? A little bit of water touches a little piece of the dough. That piece became mukhshar. Reish Lakish argues no one will hold that all of it became mukhshar. According to no one. Everyone will agree that only the part that actually became moistened became mukhshar lekabel tumah. Only if mukhshar beforehand does it become one unit. In other words, he holds that meipedes can never make something into one unit. So why is it that you have a machloikas? Why is it that we do have Rabbi Akiva? Not Rabbi Akiva, the Rabbi Lozirish Bar Toisa. Because what makes it one unit is that they already have the commonality that they're mukhshar, together with the fact that they're joined together. The halacha of them already being mukhshar is what binds them into one unit. If you don't have a legal, halachic commonality, which is what unites all the Yidden, what unites us? Not the goof, our neshama. There is a Torah that unites us. There is a halacha that unites us. It's a very deep insight what he says. All of the flour has to be mukhshar first, and if there wasn't all mukhshar, he understood the Mishnah. No one will hold that the fruit juice can make something into one unit. It won't. And therefore, oy bazoy, just as a fact, it doesn't bother us. Our Mishnah is Atana. But just for the record, our Mishnah will argue with all of the Tanoim. And Abchia, B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan, says the opposite. This is the third opinion, that our Mishnah goes with everyone. Our Mishnah divrei hakol, meaning even Rabbi Akiva. Aflagav the Rabbi Akiva Amar Taman, even though Rabbi Akiva says in Tful Yoim, Ein mei peris mechavren l'tuma. In other words, the Tful Yoim that touched that dough is only metame mokim mago'oin. Who told you that Dinei Tuma and Dinei Chala are running on the same track? They are not. And it makes so much sense. I'll tell you something. Because even if you want to go to the Chumra L'Kula, you want to use that. How many times do we find in halacha that we're machmer, we're not lenient? In other words, making it one unit here is machayev you into chala. Yeah. So we're going to say it makes it enough, one unit, to be chayiv and chala. We're being machmer. Just because you're machmer in one area doesn't mean you have to be machmer in all areas. Mash'inkin over there, and I would go more than that. I'm going to go with the opinion that says that a tful yoim, don't forget, the Mishnah is about a tful yoim. Dafka, the Mishnah is not about a person who's tummy on the level of an Av. Otful Yoim is metame truma midrabanan. Let's go with that. So it's like a double derabanan. The whole thing is only midrabanan. Masha enken the chiyuv chala is a chiyuv d'oraisa. For a chiyuv d'oraisa, we'll be more machmir. Let's go with that. Okay, that's beautiful. And now, even if someone came late, doesn't matter. We're beginning almost a new topic. Rabbi Ba, in the name of Rabbi Chia, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Now underline Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. You're going to see why this is Dafka Negeya. That ein locha machvar. Now that we have this word of chivur, which in our context is being used in the Yerushalmi as something that makes something into one unit. He made a statement concerning chala, my friends. Rabbi Shua ben Levi is taka from the greatest Amoyraim. He's an Amoyra. He went against the Mishnah. He says that Mei Peiros does not create a legal dough. And therefore, since the obligation of chala is only if the dough had a minimum amount of flour, let's go with 5 pounds, where we make a bracha. Some people say 4 pounds. If you made a dough of 10 pounds, of 1,000 pounds, but you did not use the 7 liquids, it's not 1 unit. If it's not 1 unit, you don't have the shear. Now, Rabbi Ba, B'Shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi, he did not say concerning what? I said, correct, because I went ahead. I learned the Gemara already. It's concerning challah. But when they heard it, they didn't know if he's talking about challah, because how can he say that when the Mishnah says otherwise? So Rabbi Yossi, boy, whoa, Ma'is Amart, what area of halacha is Rabbi Yeshua talking about? If it was it lachala, that will be the hardest because it's against our Mishnah, or is it latuma? By tuma it's easier. Why is it easier by tuma? Because by tuma, at least we had a machlekes tanoim. So he's going to say like Rabbi Akiva, b'shem Rabbi Yeshua. In Tamar Lechala, and just for the record, based on what we just learned, based on what Rabbi Yechanan said, huh? No. We're going for we're going. No. I'm making it better. At least, in other words, Reish Lakish is the hardest. Reish Lakish is saying our Mishnah follows no one.
Right, but I'm saying right now we're saying that
we don't know what Rabbi Shua ben Levi said.
That's
yeah. So which he is.
So,
well, Reish Lakish didn't word it that way. Okay, very good. I see what you're saying. So is it lachala? The Mishnah says chayav is b'chala, and he's saying pater men achala. Is it? Did he say it regarding tuma? If he meant chala, just for the record, the Gemara is saying a statement based on us accepting what Rabbi Yechanan just said. Rabbi Yechanan just said that something binds it in temelachala kol shchein letuma. In other words, if even for chala it does not bind, what did Rabbi Yechanan say? Itaka doesn't bind for tuma. For chala it binds. So if it doesn't even bind for chala, then Rabbi Shua ben Levi's statement is for both. If his statement was only letuma, then at least following Rabbi Yechanan, we can say that Rabbi Shua ben Levi is not going against the Mishnah. L'chala loy means it does bind. So the Gemara says Rabbi Yoina knew that Rabbi Shua ben Levi was b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi, said it concerning chala, and taka, you're right, and kol shchein l'tuma. Now, how did Rabbi Yoina have that pshita? Rabbi Yoina knew of a Tana that argues with the Mishnah. Was Rabbi Yoina B'chal didn't have a problem for Rabbi Shua ben Levi to go against the Mishnah because he already knew there was a machlekes tanoim. Rabbi Yoina Kedate, and what Kedate again, no one had printed books. Rabbi Yoina had a Mesoida of a Braisa that no one else knew. And the Braisa was B'Shem Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Rabbi Yoina had a Tana, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and for the record, so did Rabbi Yeshua, obviously, because Rabbi Yeshua Taka made a statement regarding Chala. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi would be unable to make that statement, which goes against the Mishnah, had he not had the same Tana, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that what? Tana Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we put a comments, just to know, for the record, another citing, not Yochai, Yochoi. That Rab Tarfin, Oimar, in other words, who taught the Baraisa was Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, but he wasn't giving his own opinion. He was quoting Rab Tarfin. Nemar Kan. Kan means in Shlach. Kan is in the parsha of Chala. The Torah uses the word Chala. V'nemer lahalon and Parshas Tetzaveh, they were speaking about the one-time inauguration, not of the Mishkan, of Aaron and his children, right? It says over there that they had to bring certain unique karbanos one time, and there was a chalas lechem that was made with shemen. Now the Torah didn't have to write how they made it. That's to tell you a halacha. Shemen is one of the 7 liquids. Ma chala shenem lahalon. Clear, it was a challah that was made with oil. And oil doesn't only mean oil. Oil is as one of the Shivas HaMashkin. Af challah, the obligation of separating challah has to be if the dough was made with oil or something halachically like oil. The shemen is echad mishivas HaMashkinu. That's Rab Tarfon. In other words, Rab Tarfon Befeder says that if you, that cave unto you, that if you made a dough with a liquid that's not one of the 7 liquids, then it's not called a dough. And therefore you are exempt from challah. So now that we have Gavaldik, now that we found the Braisa of Rab Tarfon, now it's clear that Reb Shua ben Levi, who was ambiguous, did so on purpose because his halach is for everything. He didn't only say it for challah. Challah v'kol shchein, as Rabbi Yechanan explained, letuma. This closes the sugya, and now we're moving on to the next part of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says,
bread out of fruit juice.
if I would remember the Rambam, I would know the answer. Since I don't remember the Rambam, I don't know. But the good thing is that we learned this together in the Rambam. For sure. Okay. Just for the record, just to know, I want to say something, that making a bracha, birchas ha-mitzvahs, lechatchila, should be done standing. I just want to make that clear, because in halacha, in the Noise Kelim, in Yeridea, they bring this whole Mishnah, and they make that point. B'diavad, you can do it sitting down. And again, the issue of a woman separating challah clothed versus unclothed is not concerning the act of the separation, which is interesting, because one might have thought that being unclothed is also, you're doing a mitzvah unclothed. That's not what's bothering here. What's bothering Chazal is, the issue here is that you can't say Hashem's name unclothed, unless one's erva is covered. Now, for some areas in halacha, all what is needed is for the erva to be covered. For other areas, like for davening, you have to have a separation between the heart and the erva. That's not needed for this. And therefore, the Mishnah says that a woman who's sitting can separate challah. Because physically, the way Hashem made the body of a woman is that when she sits, the earth is covering her erva. In contrast to a man, that even when a man is sitting, the man's erva is exposed, and therefore he may not separate challah, meaning he can't make a bracha. Another thing to know, that if a person separated challah or did any mitzvah without making the bracha prior, the mitzvah they have, but they don't have the rabbinic obligation of reciting a bracha. Says the Gemara, that Rabbi Yosi b'shem Rab Shapsai, and guys, we're going to see how this Mishnah is going to ultimately be connected to this topic. But this topic appears to be speaking about the following. As I mentioned in the intro, you have a person that's traveling. There is a rabbinic obligation prior to eating bread to wash our hands the way we know we have to wash our hands. We call this netilas yadayim. The word netila, Aviv, what does netila mean? 2 meanings. The most important meaning, just people, there is a utensil in the times of Chazal that was called a natla, the name of the keli. And it's not just about washing, for which you don't have to have a keli. You can put your hands under the faucet today, but part of this takana is dafka to use a keli. It's keli. That's what netilas yadayim means. Just to know the pshat. That's the main. Huh?
This one is natla.
Natla means what?
Actually, the keli.
The keli. Beautiful. Okay, that says on Shulchan Aruch this evening. Okay, let's go right. Now, another thing. Like I mentioned before, if a person is tamei, or if a person's kelim are tamei, ideally, prior to making the dough and the separating of the challah, ideally, become tahar or take the keli to the mikvah, because even though there's nothing wrong with me as a tamei person making dough, but then when I separate the challah is going to be tamei. It's true, I have to give it to the kohen. True, like truma, it's not asur b'hana'ah. The kohen can benefit by using the dough as fuel, but chaval, he can't eat it. So it's definitely ideal to make a dough bitara, for which you have to have a mikvah. Person is traveling, that's the case. They don't have water right here. Do they have to inconvenience themselves, either to be matayir the kelim to make the challah, finding a person who's tired to make the challah, or washing the hands before eating bread, or not? Since they don't have it here, the whole obligation is rabbinic. Say that. Now, just for the record, concerning challah, if the kelim are tamei, then the dough will be tamei, then the challah will be tamei. When it comes to netilas yadayim, when a person is, let's go with halachically, a person who's following halacha, won't do netilas yadayim, just to remember, this is in the Gemara and in Shulchan Aruch, it's not stamo, you can't do it, don't do it. Then a person should not touch the bread. Then a person should put something on one's hands to be mafsik the hands from the bread. But that's not a lechatchila. That's because you don't have to wash your hands. So the rule is that Rabbi Yosef b'shem Rab Shabsai and Abchia b'shem Rab Shimon ben Lakish, that both for challah, do I have to go find a mikvah to be matayir the kelim or myself? And for the rabbinic obligation of netilas yadayim, yes, mahalech arba'as milim. And just to know this detail, v'lo yad b'chlal. If there is water available in the direction that you're walking ahead, as the Gemara will say, up until 4 mil, somewhere between 2 and 3 miles, up ad arba milin, then I cannot eat right now. I have to walk until the water. I cannot make the challah. I have to be matayir the kelim or matayir the adam to make challah betara.
Each meal is 18 minutes.
Hiluch meal machlekes and halacha between 18 is the lowest and 24 is the biggest.
Thank you.
And just to know, if I'm not mistaken, it's from Rav Moshe, but in contemporary Poisik said that now that we have cars, he applies the same shiur for time, not for effort. So let's say that Arba Milim would be 3 miles. Let's just say it means up until an hour. That would mean you have to drive another hour. That's a very good, I remember this is a way back when, I think it's Rav Moshe. Because it didn't make sense to say, well, only ad arba milan, 2 or 3 miles with a car, not when I drive like the biggest tzaddik. When you drive wild, it will take you 30 seconds. You'll be there. So you can't say that if it's 4 mil, you don't have to go. It's up until 4 mil. So now, this shear that is a mahalach up until arba milin is only hadod the tema lofanav. You're going anyways in that direction. Anyways, you're going there. So Chazal says, let's go to a meal because this is very practical. We're Tommy. You want to have a meal? Go gevash.
Probably need to be from the faucet and sink.
From the faucet and the sink, because he's being practical, Shlomo. Today, even if it's ahead of you, but it's the sink is not on the highway. Okay. But if la'achrav does not mean behind you, la'achrav means even on your side. It means if you're going out of your direction, ein matrichin olav. I want to tell you, ein matrichin olav also means there the shir is 1 meal. Look inside the Rashirilio, in the left column before we turn to Amid. We have enough time to finish the daf. So he brings over there. This is from Masechtas Pesachim, not from Barachas. I made a mistake. You see in the left column, 5 lines from the bottom. I'm in the middle. Ubepeduk elo oivrim mefaresh de mil hu de eno chayzer aval pachos mimil chayzer. That's the din in Shulchan Aruch. Just in other words, if it's in front of you, ad 4 mil, you have to walk. If it's not in front of you, la'achrav means behind you, to your side, ad mil. If it's already a mil, then they're going to say you're going out of your way. You're not chayiv to do it. By challah, that would mean the challah will be tummy. By bread, it doesn't mean you're not stam washing. Even when one does not wash, just to know that's the din. Either wear gloves or, you have a plastic bag. Put the bag on your hand. No, the wording in Chazal, if I remember correctly, is not cover the bread. Cover your hand. It's not that difficult. I'm just being crap, but I know I have a plastic bag, those plastics that they...
You eat a sandwich and you don't plastic bread.
So that is not enough. I know that. Many people when they travel on a plane, they have an issue with Natilas Yadayim. That's a whole different parsha because many people say you can't do it in the bathroom. I know the Rebbe was of the opinion, I'm not saying for B'diavad, but for Lachatchila, the Rebbe was the opinion that any type of washing of the hands should not be done in the presence of a toilet. The Rebbe had a little restroom in his office, like tiny. And one of the first things that Rebbe did when he came here in 1941 is that he had a curtain hung to be mafsik between the toilet and the sink. So when he would wash for a meal, it would be in a different halachic room than the toilet. I'm just speaking about the airplane, the issue with the airplane. Many people, what they do is that they wash before they go on the airplane. That's not a problem because every airplane now has outside basic to drink and all of the water stations. And you eat a kazayis, and you have in mind, when you wash and lachatchili, you have in mind that you're beginning the meal in one location and you're going to continue in another location, that's fine. So, okay, so if you have, and if you can, then you use I'm just saying that really, you have to look, I didn't look at yesterday. If I remember correctly, it's not about covering the sandwich with the paper, it's about covering your hands with a shmata. After the bathroom, the same thing. That was the Rebbe's opinion. For sure, lachatchila. In other words, washing your hands in the bathroom is definitely not a lachatchila. Definitely not a lachatchila. There's a din in Shulchan Aruch that every shul should have a sink outside the shul. I know in the new building we have sinks. Don't ask. Vumegate, vumekricht, outside the shul, near the shul. But here we have a sink outside the shul. Enter a shul, you wash your hands. Let's go weiter. Okay. Now, daf chaf, amid beis. So this concept of ad arba mil or la'achrav ad mil, let's apply this in a different scenario. And that is, shoymrei ganois upardesim. A person's job is to be a shoymer. Okay, there's only one thing, that the way the culture was that one of the jobs of a shomer was when needed, the shomer was the one who irrigated the land. When he irrigated the land, he needed to go get water. What's if the only job of the shomer would be like today in America, you were hired to guard, that's all they want to do. Then vadai, they would not have to get water because the whole word of lafanav, you have to go until 4 mil is because since you're going there anyways, so go there now. A shomer did have to irrigate, not now, but he's going to have to irrigate. So there's also a logic to say, go walk until 4 mil. You don't have to get water now. I know, but when you wash your hands, already bring back the water to irrigate. We're not being matriach for you to do something that you never would have done. So the question is, ma'at avidloim? Do we say that the shomer ganas upardesim is kilifneim? Like I mentioned, since anyways part of their job, if part of their job, which as it was then, was to irrigate, so they have to get water anyway. So Chazal can say, go ad arba milin. Or do we say, haknish kan cup? They're not traveling. Yeah, when they have to irrigate, who says maybe they have to irrigate once a week? Thursday they irrigate. Today is Sunday. So it's kila acharem, which would mean that only if water is up until 1 mil do they have to go. And if not, they are allowed to eat su'uda without washing their hands, just with covering their hands. Now, why are we speaking about this? For this kasha, we have our Mishnah. So the Gemara says that this is resolved. We'll resolve it from our Mishnah. What state in our Mishnah? Ha'isha yesheves, that if a woman is sitting, then she can be the koitza chalasa, even though she's aruma, which means she's allowed to make the bracha of lahafresh chala. Now, I have a simple question. The woman at some point is going to leave her house. When she's going to leave her house, she's going to put on clothing. So why don't we say, anyways, you're going to put on clothing and make a bracha normal hate? Is that ayah from our Mishnah that, no, we don't do that. Same thing with the shomer. Even though at some point he's going to have to get water, right now he doesn't have to get water. So therefore, telling him to get water is kila achareihem. And as it says in Psachim, which would mean that they only have to go get water ad mil. Which means, yeah, she's only unclothed because she's in her home. She's not going to live. She's going to go out. And yet, we say, right now, she doesn't have to get dressed. So Chazal did not say she has to get dressed. She can be mafresh chala unclothed. Also, beautiful. That's the comparison. And that's that. Okay, now that we mentioned Netilas Yadayim, now let's speak about Mayim Achreinim. Why not? At least we're going on a journey. So Tani, we learned in a Braisa. Look at these words, guys. That Hamayim Shalifnei Hamazon Rishus. I want to make it very clear. Netilas Yadayim is a rabbinic obligation. You have to know how Chazal spoke. When they contrast two things to the other, and when one has a higher level of obligation relative to Mayim Achrayim, at kedei kach. Mayim shelifnei hamazon rishus. Shalachar Hamazon is a choiva. So that's first of all. And that follows the klal chamira sakanta meisura. Mayim achronim has to do with safety. And we view safety as a higher level of responsibility. We are more responsible when it comes to safety than when it comes to halacha. Because we have to be alive. Ella, even though this is only the shus, yet we find that by Mayim Rishonim, there's something more chomer than Mayim Achronim, which is Shebe Rishonim noitel umafsik. I love it. Noitel umafsik means that you interrupt the middle of the washing, which means you have to think this way, which means you have to wash your hands twice. We wash our hands 3 times. There's a hayom yoim, there's a source, there's one source for that. The third washing is, I'll explain in a moment, but halachically, Mayim Rishonim, you have to wash twice. It's not enough for you to wash your hands because the water themselves became tummy, and now you have to wash the tummy waters off your hand. Even though you can argue if there's tummy waters on your hand, ein lo davar soif. Before you washed it off, it was matama your hands. It doesn't work that way. But we are afraid that it's going to drip down. Remember the pratim, then you're going to turn your hand, and it's going to go back on your hand. But ubishniim means my machreinim, the waters that we use to wash after the meal. Noitel ve'ena mafsik. There's no it in. You got to wash it and wash it. That you don't have to do. In other words, even though something is more lenient, doesn't mean that we're going to do it in the most lenient way. It's not as important as my machreinim. It's only the shus. Mayim rishonim reshus. But when you do it, you got to wash twice. And just I think it's a Hagos Hashri. I think that's the source that we have. And it was something that's new. I think it only began in the times of the Rebbe Rashab, that in Lubavitch, before we wash Netilas Yadayim for bread, we wash each hand consecutively 3 times, not 2 times. In the oilam, you wash it twice. The twice is this din. Noitelu mafsik. Not mafsik to stop. Noitelu mafsik means that since there's 2, there's a hefsek in between. You only have like a vest haflaga. Vest haflaga is only shaykh when you have 2 vestos. Why? Washing, take off the tum off your hands, take the water tame off your hands, and then we don't want to only do things to take away surmera, taking away bad. We want to do to add kedusha. The third is to add kedusha. And that's what I mentioned before, that b'chal ben netilas yadayim, it's more known about. But ultimately, the Kohanim have to wash their hands to take away Tuma Shniyah, Stam Yadayim Shniyas. But there's another inyan of Netilas Yadayim, nothing to do with Tuma. It's to be Marbe Kedusha, to add Tara. When Hasidim have a minute, they go to the mikveh every day. They don't only do it by Tfilas Ezra. It's not only for that. Even if a person is in a state of Tara, Hichain, Likras, Hashem Alekecha, you're getting ready to daven, you want to upgrade where you're at. It's beautiful. Not only about taking away the negative. Person has to make a few dollars, not only to pay the bills. That's just surmera. You gotta make a few dollars more.
A little bit of water, right? Like, raise the sauce like this. You don't have to.
Very good. And Shlomo is saying good? Yeah. Okay. Now says the Gemara. First, what does mafsik mean? The word mafsik was confusing when they said mafsik. What I mean, mafsik sounds like you get to wash less. You can be mafsik it. My machroinim. No, mafsik means noitel v'shoina. You got to wash it twice to create a space. Vest haflaga. Vest haflaga is only shaykh when you have 2 vestos. Now, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yaakov, bar Rabbi Yitzchak boy, noitel v'shoine va'at omrat reshut. How can you even use that word? And furthermore, you just said that if you're traveling and you don't have water, you're chayiv to go ad arba milin to get water. How can there be any chazal that uses the word reshus when we're so machmir? You have to wash your hands not once, it's not enough, you got to wash it twice. If you don't have water, you got to kirich who knows where. Va'at omrat reshus. He made a protest. This is not a kasha, and nothing has to be answered. And yet, yes, because that's the point. We say radical words to wake the Talmidim up. Now, I think the hemshach of Rabbi Yechanan is that when you read the word reshus, you can think nishkaferlach. He reminds you with stories. And hamaisu hua ikir. In other words, from a story, you get the bottom line. That because of someone who failed to wash mayim rishayim, let's see who remembers these stories. Nechal basar chazir. Chazir was eaten. So he reminds us, the Mara Fulda. Where did we have this? I think we had this in Brachas. He also is Maramis. So the first one under the Gemara, that there was an innkeeper. He doesn't even write all of it. He writes a little bit. The innkeeper had two kitchens, a kosher kitchen and a chazer treifa kitchen. The kosher food costs more money. So what he did was, it's amazing. People came into the inn. If they washed their hands, the innkeeper knew they're a yid. He gave them kosher to eat. If they didn't wash their hands and they sat down to eat bread, the bread was a good bread for everyone, the same bread. Is that ayah that they're goy? So there was taka maisa that a person came to an inn and maybe he misunderstood this one chazal that ma'im rishonim rishus daf benish. Sat down. So what did the innkeeper give him? He gave him basar chazir. The maisa from the Alter Rebbe. When the person told the innkeeper, I don't care, the kosher, the non-kosher, the whole mice. Okay. Now, balashniim, and another story, because of someone who failed to wash my machroinim, yotzas, isha mibesa, a woman got divorced. It was much worse than that. Three people got killed. What was the story? So the story was with Kidor. So there were two Tanoim. It was Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yosi. Where did we have this Gemara? Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yosi, they went to an inn. And it was before Shabbos, and they gave the innkeeper Kidor their wallets. After Shabbos, they came to Kidor to get their belongings back, and he told them, Lahadam, you never gave me anything. What are they going to do? So the next morning, before they left, this guy, Kidor, he ate breakfast, he ate lentils, he didn't wash my machrenim. Some of the lentils were stuck on the mustache. So they went to his wife, and they told him that your husband told us to tell you to give us back our belongings. And as a simon that he told it to us, he told something that no one knows, only you two, that you served them lentils this morning. That was the simon that they used to tell him that he taka sent us. No one else was there, so she gave them back their wallets. When Kidar comes home and she told him, you sent the two guys to get the wallets, two Tanoim. So either he divorced her or he went to kill her. And this woman had a son from another marriage who wanted to protect his mother. So he killed her and he killed the son. And then he killed himself. That's the shalish. All because what would have been much better? To wash my much better. It's ironic. Is don't steal. No, that's it. Wash my machreinim. Now, weiter. Let's have another minute. This is back to our Mishnah. That why is she allowed to make a bracha? Because physically, that's what happens when she sits down. So the Gemara says from here you see Hada Amra that agava is that the buttocks ein behem mishum erva, that they're exposed even if a woman is sitting. So this is a halachic. The isur of reciting a bracha when the erva is exposed is only resolved if a woman is sitting because of Hada Amra agava is ein behem mishum erva. Another thing says the Gemara that Hada da'at amar lebracha, that the agavos are not called erva, they're not fully covered when you're not wearing clothing. Okay, she's allowed to say a bracha. But avol lahabit, but for someone to look at it, afilu kol shehu, there's an isur of gazing at any exposed part of a person, of a woman. That's an asur. Kadadetani, that even forget about the agavos. Hamistakel ba'akeva shalisha. If you look at the heel of a woman, is kemistakel bebeis harechem. V'hamistakel bebeis harechem. Look at what Chazal said. Ki'ilu ba'ala. It's as if he cohabited with her. Ad kedei kach. Now that we're speaking about aroyos, so one final statement for today's daf. Shmuel Amar, koil be'isha erva. That even the voice of a woman, now there's a machlekes in the Rishonim, most understand this not to mean her voice. It means when she's singing. And then you have a Rashba in Brachas, daf chav dalid, that speaks about even conversing with a woman. When the Mishnah says, that there's certain types of conversations that could lead into any level of intimacy, and where is the boundary? The conversation is the boundary, and that's expressed with the statement "koil